always say I don't like to give advice. I've got a lot of information. You know, if you want some information.
Dolly, how are you?
Well, I'm good, Tom. How are you?
I'm not bad. I love the record. Congratulations on it.
Well, thank you. I'm as proud of it as anything I've ever done. I had some wonderful artists and some wonderful songs, so how could I miss?
Truly, truly. Now, tell me the story behind this now. So I remember this being in the news. You were inducted, it was announced that you were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and you said, I'm not sure if I'm the right fit for that.
Well, I did think that because they were telling me I was going to be inducted. And I thought, well, I have not earned that right because there's so many people I know in the rock field that have never even made it into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and should have. And I thought, well, why are they putting me in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? So I just I wasn't being controversial. I was just being concerned that I might not belong there. And then they convinced me that it was about more than just being in rock, that my music had influenced people through the years. And so when they went ahead and told me all that. So I said, well, then if that's how it is, I'll gracefully accept. Went in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I thought, well, I can't just be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame without something rock and roll. So that's what inspired me to do the album.
How was the ceremony? How was the induction?
Well, it was great. I wrote a song for that, just for that night, telling about how that happened and kind of put to rest that little controversy and all that. But that I've been rocking since the day I was born, loving Elvis and Jerry Lee and Carl Perkins and all those great people, Little Richard. You know, I think we all kind of grew up on that, even those of us in country music. But I just really, just kind of went out and said that I accept. And hey, I may do a rock album. Any of you rock stars want to join me if I do? And then they say, yeah. And sure enough, bunches of them did.
You make a great point there that in the early days of country music, especially when you were starting out in sort of like the 60s and 70s in country music, the lines between country and rock aren't what they are now. You had Elvis, who was making country music and rock music. You also had people like Conway Twitty, who was a country artist who also made rockabilly music. You're right. Like there was less of you could be a rock and a country artist a little bit easier back then.
Yeah, and so many of the great artists that were in rock were from Memphis, from Tennessee. They were just country people, like Carl Perkins with the blue suede shoes. And, of course, Chuck Berry, he seemed to be so, even though he was just so commercial, you would think that Chuck was like a country person, the way he wrote the songs and the way he performed. And, of course, Little Richard, who everybody loved because he was just Little Richard. He was crazy and exciting and all that. So, but yeah, I think most of us in our young years, even the country kids, were listening to that. And I remember the first time I ever heard the Beatles sing I Want to Hold Your Hand. I think I was in high school at the time. And I thought that was the greatest sound, that I'd ever heard. And so I really got a chance to actually get to be with some of the people that I had admired through the years, even as a grown-up.
You dedicated the album to your husband, Carl. Who, my understanding, he's a big rock and roll fan. Is that right?
Well, he's not a fan. He's a freak. Well, he's a freak anyway. But he loved Led Zeppelin, but he loved all the really hard. He loved the acid rock. The louder, the better. And all of the years we've been together, which is almost 60 years now in the spring, that's what I've heard him play. I mean, very few other things. So I wanted to choose a few of his favorite songs to do in the album. And he always told me that I should do Open Arms with Kenny Rogers back when I was singing with Kenny. And of course, I missed that opportunity. But I thought, well, I'll put this in the album and see if Steve Perry might want to sing it with me. And they said, oh, you'll never get Steve Perry. He's not singing anymore. I said, well, I'll ask. And he was more than happy to do it. And he sang so good. I was so honored to have him.
Well, you know what it's like for other people to sing your songs as well. I mean, for people who know you as a kind of a groundbreaking singer and big country star, you came up in Nashville and country music at the time when you were both a singer with Porter Wagoner and a big singer on TV and on records, but also writing songs for other people, kind of like Willie Nelson was at the time, kind of like Chris Christopherson was at the time. What does that still mean to you when other people take on your songs?
It's one of the greatest compliments that you could ever have, especially when you take yourself as serious as I do as a songwriter. I think that's my favorite thing that I do, loving feeling like I've left something in the world today that wasn't there yesterday. And then to hear somebody take a song of mine, and especially like, for instance, I Will Always Love You, how Whitney Houston could take that song and take my little simple heartbreaking song and then turn it into such a worldwide big production, and yet still keep the emotion in it. But when I first heard it, I thought, oh my God, I had no idea that that little song could be that big and that good. So it's a joyful feeling to hear somebody else do your songs, period, and then how they do them. A lot of people say, oh, you must hate it when somebody does one of your songs and they do this and that. I said, no, I don't, because I love hearing how other people interpret what I had written. I know I do that with other people's songs. I'll take a song, and do my take on it because what it means to me as a singer. So I'm always honored when anybody just wants to do my songs for any reason.
What was this thing I was reading on the way in here? And I didn't know the story, that song was offered to Elvis first. What's the story on that one?
Well, Elvis, no, I had already had a #1 record on it. It came out, I had an album, the Jolene album came out, I think in 1972, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And I Will Always Love You was also on that album. But I had a #1 song on I Will Always Love You back in the early 70s. And it became a very popular song. Everybody seemed to like the song, and it was easy to sing. But Elvis had loved the song and wanted to record it. And I was going to go down to the studio. They'd invited me down to hear him record it, and I'd never met him. I was so excited. Then Colonel Tom called me the day before and said, we don't record anything with Elvis unless we have the publishing. And so I said, well, I hate to hear that, because I was really looking forward to Elvis doing it, but I can't give you the publishing because I had just started my publishing company at the time, and that was my most important copyright at the time, and still is. But I just wouldn't let him do it, and it broke my heart, and I'm hoping it broke Elvis's heart because I know Priscilla said he loved it, and she said he was singing that song to her when they came off the courthouse steps when they got divorced. And so I knew he loved the song, so I just wouldn't let him have it. And then I was glad I kept the publishing after Whitney did her big version of it. But I would still love to have heard Elvis sing it, and that's why I wrote the song that's in the Rockstar album called "I Dreamed About Elvis."
Good on you for sticking to your guns back then. That's not easy to do back then.
No, but like I've always said, it is called the music business, and I was trying to take care of the business end of the music business, and I was starting my publishing company, and I knew that I wanted to claim my own self and my own songs, and so I just wasn't willing to do it, even for Elvis.
Fair enough. Let's listen to another song on the record that I really liked.
Don't get me started on politics. Now how are we to live in a world like this? Greedy politicians, present and past, they wouldn't know the truth if it bit them in the ass. Now tell me, what is truth? Have we all lost sight of common decency, of the wrong and right? How do we heal this great?
I'm Tom Power. You're listening to Q. My guest is the legendary Dolly Parton. We're talking about her new album, Rockstar. That's a song called World on Fire from that record. I heard that song came to you in the middle of the night.
Well, it did. I had finished the album, and Kent Wells and I had decided 30 songs is plenty. So we thought, Kent said, Dolly, you can't record every rock and roll song that's ever been written. And so we had put it to bed, and then we were going to pick and choose, what we were going to do. And that very night, I just kind of, woke up just woke up. And I just kind of felt like I needed to write something. So I went in the kitchen, made me some coffee, and I'd been watching the news, of course, as I had been and do, just kind of staying up on things. And I think the night before I had felt heavy-hearted, but I didn't know I was going to write a song. So I just got up, and that song started coming to me. Liar, liar, the world's on fire. What you going to do when it all burns down? And so I just started writing it, and it just all started coming together. In daylight, I called Kent. I said, we got to call another session. I've written another song that has to go on this album. So we did, and I just really am proud of the song.
You don't have a lot of songs like it, Dolly.
I know I don't, but I figured this needed to be said, and I felt led to say it, just thinking about what we're doing to ourselves, to each other, what we're doing to this world. And I'm concerned about humanity and civilization, and I just don't get it. Why grown people, smart, intelligent people, are allowing so many things to happen that don't have to be happening if we would just try a little harder and be a little more willing to make things work properly instead of just grouping up in little pockets here and there and just, like my mouth's bigger than your mouth, my bomb's bigger than your bomb, my daddy's bigger than your daddy kind of attitude, to where, till they just allow this people to suffer. And I just am the kind of person, I feel for everybody. I feel for myself as well. I want to stay around. I want to have a world to live in.
I feel like that comes from your sort of spirituality, your faith. I've heard you talk about that before.
It does. I mean, it's like I just really feel like we could be more caring, more giving, more decent as people, and allow a lot more good stuff in than to just kind of grab on anything to make a point, and then we've made a point. Whether we continue to believe it or not, we hang on to it because we think, well, if we turn it loose, we're losers. Well, we're going to be losers if we don't turn that kind of thinking loose. So I do think a lot of it comes from my spiritual background, and that's what keeps me motivated, is my creative and spiritual energy. That's what gets me through so much stuff, and the fact that I am able to write down what I think and feel and see. Then that's my weapon and my tool, and that's how I communicate with the world.
I think you got a good shot of
And
it
we're
too.
done.
We're done.
Pardon me?
What everything? Hold
No,
on.
I said, and with God. No, I
Oh,
didn't
and
say
with
we were
God.
done.
I thought you said, and we're done. I said, oh my God, Dolly, holy moly,
No, I said that's how I communicate with myself and with God.
I felt like
No, we're not
I
done.
got struck by
No.
lightning. I thought that's what happened there,
No, I was just going to say, but if we don't shape up, we are done. All of us are done.
I think you got a good opportunity for people to listen to you, because I don't think I know another artist that people who can't seem, and this is going to sound trite, but I don't mean it that way, that people who can't seem to agree on anything, people who are so unbelievably divided right now, you seem to be a good bridge that everyone can seem to, you know what I mean? Like people who disagree about everything can seem to meet on your music.
Well, that's good. I hope so. I've been around a long time. I care about people. I care about everybody. I really do. And I just care about things that matter, and should matter more. And I just, I think people kind of know me. I've been around for 6 decades, and it's kind of like a familiar face. They're used to seeing me and hearing me, and they've watched me in the movies. They've heard me on the radio and seen me on TV. So I'm kind of like a family member. I've become a household word, so to speak, in every house but home, as the song says. I stay going all the time doing my stuff. But I think that the fact that people know that who I am, where I came from, and the kind of people I come from, I think they're more prone to listen to somebody like that than just a stranger in town. So I just kind of feel like a family member to everybody. And so it's almost like if your mama tells you something, they'll listen, or your older sister or a favorite aunt. That's how I want people to think of me, like, well, we might ought to listen. She might know something. So I don't know. That's kind of how I feel about it, because I feel like the world is my family, and I'm worried about us.
That's beautiful. I loved your version of Let It Be on this record with Paul McCartney and with Ringo Starr. You kind of reunited the Beatles for this.
But I didn't think about that until later, when I was going to do Let It Be, which is one of my favorite songs, and I called Paul, because I'd met Paul a few times, kind of not friends, but I knew him. We were acquaintances, and we're nice to each other when we say, hey, good to see you again, that kind of thing. But then when I recorded the song, when I reached out to see if he would be willing to sing on it with me, and he said, well, I'll play too if you want me to. I'd love to sing with you, and I'll play the piano, which that was like over the top, and I was excited to death. And it was only after we put the vocals down that we did that I thought, hey, I should put Ringo. I should replace the drums we have on here and have Ringo to play, because that is the last of the Beatles. But I think at that time they tell me that Mick Fleetwood and Peter Frampton were in the studio where Ringo was. And so Mick put some percussion on, and Peter Frampton played that great Turnaround. And I did something else with Peter, too, on the album. But I thought, wow, this is an all-star record now. And then to have the two Beatles that are left on that, I was proud of that.
I didn't know you knew Paul coming up. I figured you guys, maybe you guys did meet in the 70s or 80s or something like that.
Well, first time I met Paul McCartney was on the Porter Wagoner show when we were doing a show out at what used to be Opryland here in Nashville. Paul was over there doing something. He was in town, and he came backstage where Porter and I were working. And I think he wanted to meet Porter at that time. And so that's when I first met him. So, of course, we made our acquaintances then. And then every now and then I'd see him backstage of a show that we were working on separately together. We were not together, but we were on the same show. And then I'd see him at a restaurant. We went to a restaurant that we often went to in LA, and I'd seen him there a couple of times, just say, hey, walk over to the table. So it was just sweet and friendly, but I never had the chance to sing. So this was a big deal to get to sing with all these great artists. And Elton and I, every time we get together backstage, we start singing all the great old hits, country hits, because he loves country music. And so when I got ready to do the album, I loved Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me. So I called to see if he would sing on it. And he did. And it was great.
All these old kind of classic rock artists love country music. Yeah, you mentioned Elton. I just had Elton on maybe about a couple of years ago. And we talked about how much we love country music. I was just thinking with the Beatles, they recorded country music. Ringo sang Act Naturally, that old Buck Owens song.
Yeah. I know. They love that. And I can tell most people, I think any musical person, writers or singers, I think you're interested in listening to all kinds of music, because you may think, well, maybe I'll pull a little something from this. Maybe I'll pull a little something from that. So I think if you're smart, that's a good thing to do. Just how country people always listen to rock, R&B. I love all the music of the world. I love some more than others, of course, but you will get great ideas for little rhythms or little licks, or like ideas for songs, or just the tempo of a song, how you kind of might go into some moody little feel that's based on something you heard in R&B, but it still can be country. So I do think that all music, I think people do listen to other forms of music.
One of my favorite tracks on the record is a later song. You did Wrecking Ball by Miley Cyrus. Miley Cyrus is your goddaughter, from what I understand.
Yeah, well, actually, she's my favorite goddaughter. I used to, when Billy Ray Cyrus had this big, huge hit, Achy Breaky Heart, back so many years ago, well, we toured together. We worked on the road together, and Billy's wife was pregnant with Miley during that time. So Billy Ray said, well, when this child is born, you're going to have to be its godmother. And I said, well, busy as we all are, I don't know that I could be a great godmother, fill in all the gaps that a godmother's supposed to fill in, but I'll be her fairy godmother. So anyway, she became my little special little girl. And so I didn't see her all that often till we started working on the Hannah Montana show. And then she opened up a whole new world of young fans for me. And then we got really to spending more time together. And from then on, we've just kind of been at it. And we love each other, and we love how we sing together. And so I love doing Wrecking Ball on this album. I had to do that one. It's one of my favorite Miley songs. And so I was real proud of how that one turned out.
It's it's an interesting life the two of you have led, going from singing these old country songs to TV to having this sort of worldwide fame and a lot of people's attention on you, which is both positive and negative. Have you given her any advice over the years on how to handle all that?
No, I'm just there for her. I always say I don't like to give advice. I've got a lot of information, if you want some information. But Molly's just always seemed to know, like myself, who she is. She had to go through, when she was going through all of the changes that she was going through and being criticized and people thinking, oh my God, she's going off the deep end or whatever. I really felt like at that time that Hannah Montana character was so strong, such a worldwide thing, but that was a character, not a person. Miley Cyrus played Hannah Montana, and Miley Cyrus was having the need to be Miley Cyrus. So she made a lot of choices that a lot of people didn't agree with, but I always saw what she was doing, and I always prayed for her. I always wanted her to kind of make sure she didn't go over the total edge. And I think she knew what she was doing. I really do. And I think she still does. Molly's so smart, so talented. She's a great writer. Her comedic timing is unbelievable. And so I think Molly will always have a great career. Even on television, I'd love to see her have another show of her own. But Molly's so gifted, and I just love that I got to sing one of the songs on the album with her.
One last question before we go, because at this stage of your career, it was surprising to a lot of people for you to make a record in this genre and to make it so authentically and for it to be such a great rock record. What's one thing left that you haven't done in your career that you'd like to try, that you'd like to do?
Well, I am in the middle of it right now. I am doing my life story as a Broadway musical, and I have written the music, and a lot of it, of course, will be some of the hits, but I've written a lot of original music to carry my story. But I'm working on the music now, recording the music. So that's something I've been wanting to do for years, and I'm looking forward to that.
I'm glad. I hope it's an occasion that I can talk to you about country music again, Dolly. Thanks so much for making the time for us today.
Oh, you can always talk to me about country music, but right this moment, I'm a rock star.
You're right. I forgot about that. Lovely to see you, Dolly. Thanks for making the time.
Thank you.